Hello, everyone. Leslie M. Thornton, Hypnosis for Permanent Weight Loss. So welcome. Today we have Pam with us. Pam is a current client of the Hypnosis for Permanent Weight Loss program and now the Warrior Goddess Mastermind program. And as always, I love to bring on clients because it's even good for me, Pam, to be honest, to hear what the experience is, because I know what we do, but hearing it from you really makes the difference for me as well and for everybody else who's listening, because the truth is we all come from different backgrounds and have different stories and reasons why this program resonates with us. And so really appreciate your willingness to come on today and share with us. So if you could just start by saying maybe where you're from and what you do and what led you to Hypnosis for Permanent Weight Loss, that would be great.
Sure. So I'm from just outside of Boston on the ocean. So very fortunate that I can live here in New England. And what I do, so I'm a software engineer and a transformational coach. So I wear those two hats and have lots of fun switching back and forth between the two. But in some ways, they're very similar. I like to help people solve problems and improve their experience in life. And what brought me to the Hypnosis for Permanent Weight Loss was actually a referral from a colleague of mine who's a team member of yours. And, she just, had a little chat with me about what's going on. And, from the standpoint of would I be interested in referring some of my clients to the program? And I was like, well, wait a minute, I think I need this program first. So
Absolutely. Yeah. And I really, every coach needs a coach. Like if anything that I know, it's like we're always up leveling ourselves, and the more successful we are with our careers. And I remember talking to you about this, Pam, on our first conversation. It's like sometimes the more our inner worlds and our food stuff and stress stuff is like it's not been something we've all the way mastered yet.
Correct. Yeah.
So yeah. Cool. So then what was it like for you, like with your food stuff? Because obviously you're successful in these areas, but you were still struggling with the food thing.
Yeah. And for me, my story may be a little different than some people in the program in that I did not have a weight problem until I hit 40. And it was a combination of being perimenopausal, so perhaps some metabolic changes. But the biggest thing was that I was just going through a divorce. And that divorce was very hard. It left me feeling very, vulnerable and stressed for sure. I was working a lot harder, being a single mom. But also the marriage itself was one in which, I jokingly refer to my ex-husband as being the food police, that he really was always concerned with my weight and my intake of food, even though I had not ever been before. So I didn't enjoy food. It wasn't something that I felt comfortable satisfying my pleasures around taste and sensation, because I would have to defend myself basically to someone else, right? So once that was removed, I was like a kid in a candy store, no pun intended, but it was like, wow, food is fantastic. And there's nothing like the first time you eat a sleeve of Oreo cookies. And not only was it like, oh my God, this feels so good, but it took down my stress level. It did something, I think, in my brain that just allowed me to feel calmer, take away some of that pain, in a very short-lived and not in a healthy way. But it was definitely something that started me on a trajectory of using food to ease pain and stress, emotional distress. So I would say like within the first, year, I probably gained 10 pounds, which, was probably put me in a normal range as opposed to an underweight range. So I wasn't really too worried about that. But then a few years later, I remarried. And in the first year of my marriage, first of all, I realized it was a very difficult marriage, emotional and verbal abuse that was shocking to me. Also, my father was dying in that very first year. Also, the little company I used to work for got acquired by a huge corporation. So there was work stress, relationship stress, losing my parent, and being married to someone who really loved food and cooked for me. So there was more food, and it got out of control. Like that was definitely my go-to for trying to manage what felt like an out of control situation in my life. And I would say in the first 6 months of that marriage, I gained 20 pounds and haven't lost it yet. That marriage only lasted 2 years, but so, definitely tried over the years since then, to diet and learn how to eat right. And I feel like, I forget the expression you use, but I knew everything about food.
Yes.
I knew what I should be eating. I knew what was best for me. I knew what to avoid, but it wasn't happening. And I was feeling really frustrated, feeling bad about myself for sure, because as you said, I felt like I had success in other areas of my life where I could work hard at something and be successful. I couldn't work hard at this issue and be successful. It just didn't work. And like many people, doing a diet where I might lose 10 pounds and then not be able to maintain the rigor of that particular diet and gain it right back. So, it became a situation where I wanted it to be different, didn't know how to make it different, was frustrated, discouraged, felt like, well, this is just who I'm going to be for the rest of my life. And I hated that. I really, really hated that. And was embarrassed. I mean, I'm embarrassed by not being able to control something, or, not being able to manage something that's clearly dysfunctional. It's not, not healthy. And even being smart didn't make a difference, having all the knowledge I had and being smart and wise, and also having had tons of therapy and feeling like, yeah, I got my issues pretty much under control, but that was not the case. And that's what really led me to the program.
Absolutely. And I'll never forget our first conversation. And I love hearing it again. And just, I think there's so many pieces in your journey that so many women are going to be able to relate to. Like, number one, you mentioned menopause, and of course, and I have an episode on menopause. If anyone hasn't listened to that one yet, it's one of our most listened to episodes, where it's like, yes, we know the science behind it and there may have been stuff, but at the same time of menopause, it's like, you also were unhappy, in your marriage and it wasn't working. Right. And, and that's the part that it's so easy, right? We have it all flashing in our face all day long of like, this is what happens at menopause and blah, blah, but it's like, what else was happening at that, time period of your life? Like, you're probably transforming as a woman, like, again, for, the whatever amount of times that it happens. And it's just like every piece of your story, Pam, is just like the butterfly that's just like emerging and like, and then totally get, okay, so got out of that marriage. And then in that next marriage, and then a parent passes away, and the verbal abuse that just like shocks, right? The emotional or verbal, it's like, what? And it's just like, that happened to me too. And it's just like, what? And I remember sharing that with you. It's like so surprising, but then also, right. And that first relationship too, there's so many things I can relate to from, with him being so like watching everything that you're eating. And I'm curious, I had to ask, I don't remember, we must have talked about this, but your parents, like, was your mom weight focused, or like where would that come in for you to take on his things about not eating too much or whatever?
Well, if anything, I grew up in the generation where as a baby, if you were plump, you were healthy. And I was not a plump baby. I was a skinny little kid, and it caused my mother a lot of distress. And so there were many meal times where, you're not going to leave the table till you eat everything on your plate. And I was an anxious child whose all my anxiety went to my stomach. So I would dread meal times. I would just feel so stressed about eating and not enjoy it. So it wasn't even an enjoyable process for me. And just, I felt like a disappointment because I was never going to be a curvy, plump child for my mother. I was going to be this skinny little scrawny nervous kid. And so that's a whole bunch of stuff there too. But she certainly went through, my observation of her in adulthood was her weight went up and down a lot. She had been really trim and fit as a younger woman, gained weight. And so for her, it was that constant up and down that I felt a little bit of judgment about, certainly as a young adult, like, gee, my mom can't get this under control. What's the matter with her? So I could, I feel like I've lived on so many different sides of this issue. For myself, observing someone else, judging them for not being able to control what they put in their mouth, and judging myself as well. So it's definitely a complicated, messy topic.
Absolutely complicated and yet so common,
Yes.
those messages that come in and it almost like doesn't matter, but like obviously there was something around food and like, the dynamic of like, I'm going to be a disappointment, but at the same time, it's like, I don't want to eat, but I'm telling you I should be eating, and like, right. And then it's just like, there's the conversation that happens around food. And then here Pam is with her first husband and, he's like watching all the things. And it's like, just trying to fit into this thing, but not maybe knowing, what's the truth for us. And
Right.
the reason I asked about that was because, our relationships, like I was saying, it's just like, whatever is the sticking point or like that one thing or whatever, it's just like, it is that flashlight on, like what is still unhealed within us. Like I share all the time about the one relationship I had where I was following, I was really, fit or whatever. And then I started falling off my strict plan. And then he called me up one day and said, I'm looking at photos of us from 4 months ago. You've put on a lot of weight, and like, I just lost it, like I didn't even know what to do. Like I just hung up the phone and just like, I'm not like a silent treatment type of person, but like, I just couldn't even talk. Like it was like beyond mad. It was just like, I can't describe it. It was like something I hadn't had. But I'm glad it happened. And this is what I always say is like, I'm, having the self-awareness of being like, okay, if this comment, shakes me this much, right. Then it's like, this is like my next wound to really heal, and that's, that relationship ended. And then I found myself subconsciously the same as you, like the whole Oreo roll kind of concept. But for me, I realized that it was like to get back at him, but he was actually like the unconscious mother for me of being like, well, F you, mom. It was the weirdest thing, right?
Yeah.
This is what's so interesting about being aware of our thoughts, was because as I was doing it, it was like, I was present to the fact that it was like, I wasn't even in a relationship with him anymore, but I was like, well, I'll show you how fat I'm going to get.
Yeah.
I wasn't even with him anymore. Right. It was so weird. And then,
I get that completely. And
right.
Because I think that was something at play for me as well, of like, look at me, I've gained all this weight and I always have a boyfriend. Ha 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 ha. Like I am more attractive to men now than I've ever been. And I think that was a little bit of rubbing his face in it too. But
look, I can be fat and get any man I want. Oh my gosh. Right. It's so weird. And I appreciate our being able to be so honest about it, because it's just the reality of what we do.
Right.
And we can be aware of the fact that it doesn't make any sense, but still know that that's what's happening. So that's when I started doing the inward work of being like, okay, it's the relationship with myself. It's really just relationships in general. Like clearly I still have parent stuff. I still have body stuff. I still have food stuff. And just, if I really want to attract that ultimate soulmate, which I know is a path you and I are both happen to be on right now, it's like the opportunity is to then really take a hard look. Right. And I remember our conversation with you just kind of really getting present to like, okay, in order for that to happen, this area of my life needs to be. So if you wouldn't mind sharing more about that, like.
I think, because I think one of the things that certainly, as I mentioned before, is just through this journey with weight and body image of a lot of self-judgment and not accepting who I am, not loving who I am as I am. And I don't think you will attract a good mate when you don't even like yourself very much. Or there's some part of yourself that you are ashamed of. And one thing that's happened for me through the program is just releasing so much of that shame and embarrassment to the point where it's okay if I weigh what I weigh. I still deserve X, Y, and Z, right? Like I still deserve to be loved. I still deserve to love myself, right? This is okay. It's just my body is a certain shape. It has nothing to do with who I really am as a person. And that's been really big for me to really feel that, to start feeling, of course I deserve whatever any person on this planet deserves. It doesn't matter if I can't lose weight or if I weigh a certain amount. That has nothing to do with it. So that's been very powerful but subtle. Like that's not like something you wake up in the morning and say, "Yay, I no longer feel bad about myself." It's just sort of this gradual change until you
Yeah.
realize, that's not really what drives me anymore. And so
Oh,
that's been really good. That's a big relief.
yeah. So awesome. I love that for you. And it's like, it's that when we, and I don't know what it was like for you, it's just like the going into a relationship with the hot, like trying to be like perfectionist part of ourselves of like, I'm going to be what this man needs me to be, or I'm going to keep it together because I don't want to look bad in these areas versus just like, I am who I am. Like we're coaches. We're always going to be up leveling ourselves. Like there's always going to be areas of our lives that we're choosing to turn towards when we know that it's the next thing for ourselves. And to be able to communicate that and also set boundaries at the same time, because
Absolutely.
yeah, it's that balance of vulnerability. Like we need to be able to be real, but when someone else also has that same wound, or maybe they have judgments about, I have a friend who she's working on getting past her anorexia, to be honest, and she's super successful. And it's, I've gotten the privilege of getting to know her and to really see the insides of like the torture that her brain goes through. And she's so smart and she's so aware of everything that's happening. And yet it's still happening, and she actually entered into a relationship not too long ago. And she's been putting on a bunch of weight as she's like leaving diet mentality, something that I can relate to, just maybe on a less extreme level mentally, but very much similar. And, putting on that weight and then having this partner, and like, it's her worst case scenario of like, first of all, it's so painful for her to be putting on that weight. But it's actually a sign of her like going towards her healing, and then it's like to then be confronted by the partner possibly abandoning her because this is what's happening on the way to her recovery. So to simultaneously be able to share with your partner, like, these are the baggage that I am carrying, and I have no expectations from you except to have you support me if you can, or you can ask me questions if you want, but like to not, because this person also has some abilities to kind of come in and like help where help is not necessarily wanted. So like I was saying, the vulnerability, but then also like, hey, I really appreciate you caring about my health so much. I want to let you know I have tons of support. Would it be okay if you didn't try to help me with this anymore? To like still stay solid as our woman who can take care of ourselves, not allow this other stuff in that I'm sure you face with your first marriage of, constantly whatever. And then still being able to be you at the same time and ask for what you need. So definitely a dance, and bringing on those relationships, because the truth is, like, are we ever going to be perfect when we enter a relationship? Maybe not, but the tools for how to hold ourselves or carry ourselves and whatever as we're in it, I think can make the total difference.
And that desire to, because the thought of having to be perfect before I can be in a relationship really did come up for me when I started thinking about, I really want to be in a relationship, but my hesitancy is I'm not ready yet. And some of that is that I'm still doing some work on myself emotionally. But really the bigger part was I want to be fabulous and look amazing when I come in. So,
yes, thank you for being honest. Yes.
And that was like, well, can I let that go? Can I be who I am? Yeah, absolutely. Like that seems so silly, but that was a big part of what was keeping me from even considering being in a relationship or showing up, available to the universe in some way.
That statement
Yeah.
right there, Pam, is going to change so many
Yeah.
women's lives, because it's there for so many. And it's like, for you, it sounds like it came kind of quick with the awareness of being like, absolutely, I can. But for a lot of people, that belief is strong of
Yeah.
like, no, I can't get into a relationship at this weight. You
Right.
know, that was a main blocker for me of being like, well, if I get fat right now, then my chances of finding, but like, I actually found that it was going to put off my chances faster because I'm preventing my healing to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That like in order like to get myself free from this. And then so anyway, having to prove it wrong. And yeah, can you be fabulous now? You look
Yeah.
fabulous, Pam, by the way.
Thank you.
Like,
Well, it's the
I wouldn't
magic
want
of
you to
Zoom. You
change
only see me from here up.
I hear you, but every time that I have my clients, I'm just like, I wouldn't want you to change 1 ounce, you
Oh,
know? And it's just
yeah.
like, and I think that's like the thing to get is like, it's who we are now is just good enough and amazing.
Yeah.
And who's to say that your body right now isn't perfect and whatever. And acceptance first in my, and what we do here is really the key to
Mm-hmm.
kind of opening up the whole Pandora's box to getting everything that we want to have. So,
Absolutely.
way to go. Awesome. So cool. So you were starting to share a little bit about what you've gotten since being in the program. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, tell us about like, because I love and appreciate your knowing of going and doing the inner work and healing the wounds in the past and all that kind of stuff to up level. So yeah, what has that been like for you as you've been in? Give people a little.
I would say that has been the biggest benefit from the program. Like, even though, yeah, I want to lose weight, but really, our first initial conversation and you talked about emotional mastery, and I thought, oh, wouldn't that be nice? Just to, even though
Yes.
I teach some of these skills, I don't, I'm not in a group where I'm getting that daily coaching or consistent practice and accountability. I thought, wow, wouldn't that be something to have more emotional mastery in my life? And I would say that's the thing that I've been blown away with in the program. And, because of the teaching that you do and the coaches who are also amazing and the deep work that we do in the group and individual and privately, I have seen huge shifts in some of my lifelong struggles. And it shows up in interesting ways. I mean, there have been those breakthrough moments in a session where it's like, oh my goodness, no wonder I have struggled with this, right?
Yeah.
And
And you
to
have an
feel a
example of
shift.
that without
Well, I think it was, definitely in sessions with Dana where you go very deep, and in a way that allows your subconscious to participate, reveal information to you, and integrate that learning. All the inner child work, is amazing, because because that's, I think, where, all of this stuff starts anyway. And to be able to be aware of the needs of your inner child in the moment now, as you're facing something that's challenging or stressful or scares you, and to be able to comfort and reassure that inner child allows you to show up in a very different way. And it's hard to like be articulate about that, because
no, I think that's helpful what you said. Yeah.
yeah, when it happens on the subconscious level, it's hard to describe it very well. But I would say things like, but then seeing how it shows up in your life. So like things like in the very beginning of the program, something I wanted to do, well, you mentioned it, I think, in the very first module, about clearing out your space, getting rid of things. And I had just made plans with my upstairs neighbor. We live in an old building, an old house here in my town. And we had agreed we were going to hire a dumpster, and we were all going to do like basement cleanouts. And I really wanted to do that, and having the accountability of, we're going to have a day that dumpster shows up. But I was really hesitant to tackle my basement, because that's where a lot of old memories are, photos, memorabilia from my parents, from my childhood, from my children. And it felt like it was going to be painful to do it, because it's been painful in the past. It means revisiting some stuff, some things. And I really was dragging my feet on it. And I don't know, I think it was I think it was one of the first sessions with Lisa around belief turnaround of, my belief that this will be hard and painful, and therefore I'm avoiding it. And to be able to turn that around and the next day just start working on my basement and actually find it pretty pleasant. Like, it was fun to find some things, and it didn't feel hard to make decisions about stuff I've been carrying around for decades and I didn't need any longer. And it was okay not to decide on everything either, to know there was like a category of things. Like, I wasn't going to go through all of my old photos yet, because it would take forever and that would be more emotional. So what I did was okay, I'm not going to go through them now, but I'm going to bring them up into my living area. So I will go through them and I won't keep ignoring them. Nice. And, a few weeks later, I actually did go through those photos, which I thought was going to be so painful. And I loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved seeing all the representations of my family and friends and loved ones. Even my marriages, there was something very poignant about, I loved that person. We created these 3 children. And even my second husband, who we didn't, thank God I didn't have children with, but, seeing how happy we were together reminded me of, even though it was an illusion, it was very real to me, of being loved and adored and loving and adoring someone else. And that felt empowering instead of painful. I wasn't beating myself up like, oh my God, you thought that was going to be amazing and look what happened. Instead, I just totally enjoyed that process of it. But I would not have gotten there without the program. I would not have I don't even know how. I probably would have avoided the whole thing, but it changed the experience for me, changed the outcome, allowed me to let go of a lot of physical things I no longer needed and all the energy that went with that, and make room for the new. So that was just amazingly powerful. And wow. Some of the other things, like I did for me, one of the biggest issues around food was cravings, and feeling that that it was that constant inner battle of, do I give into this craving? Do I satisfy this craving? Mm-hmm. And, giving into it, especially in the grocery store, to me, it felt like the ice cream aisle was calling my name. I could not walk by it. Certain candies and treats and chips, like they were calling to me. And it was exhausting to resist and shameful to give in. Like, it was like this no-win situation. Mm-hmm. And that was a goal for me, was just not to be at the mercy of that experience, that behavior around cravings. And that started to happen with, I think it was your instruction, go to the grocery store and buy whatever you want. And I can remember being in the grocery store thinking, did she really say that? Am I allowed to buy whatever I want? Mm-hmm. Well, okay. And I bought some things I hadn't bought in a long time, and some of the things that do, always call my name, and then just experience them and, did some more work around it. And it got to the point where, I can walk down the cookie aisle and nobody's calling my name. Like, it's just not happening. It's just not happening. And I don't feel like I had to work at that or resist it. I think it was the process of giving myself permission to do what I wanted, and then realize I actually don't want to do that. Like, it was something amazing there. And then I did do the like to dislike process around ice cream, and I have not had ice cream since. Oh. And ice cream was like a huge dysfunctional food for me. Like, I would only buy a pint because I knew I was going to eat that in a single serving. And so that doesn't even, I don't know, it's so odd to me that I've not even had it since. I don't think about it. So that level of that inner struggle around cravings or desires for food, or should I, shouldn't I, just doesn't really happen. It's just sort of energy that's gone from my life. And I can't believe that. It seems so easy.
Oh my God. Yeah. I literally feel like I could cry. I really, really feel that way. Thank you for sharing those things. It's like, it's like, it can be that easy, but like, why is it so hard?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a client in the past who she was saying, like, she came onto a call and it was right after she came back from the grocery store and she was like in tears. And she's like, it's just so painful for me to go because like I'm trying not to eat that. I'm trying not to look, but like I want it so, but it's like it's a real thing,
Mm-hmm.
and the power of like just being like, you can have it, permission
Mm-hmm.
and not making it wrong or bad. And then it's like, okay, now I can actually just like make that decision. And I love to hear that you also got into that action, because it's like our mind will get in the way of clearing out the basement,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
of what we think and the emotions, or we don't want to go there and it's too painful and whatever. So just to be able to be like, okay, we got the painful part away, like let's just tackle it. And the thing is like when we're not taking action on those things like that, that's in the back of our mind all the time, it's like that's usually what causes us to eat or like really want the ice cream, even
Right.
if we're not aware of it. And then we're just
Right.
thinking it's all about the ice cream, but it's like, no, it's really there's these blocks, or
Mm-hmm.
these just energetic things happening, or no permission to have it if I wanted it, that makes it so enticing. So, oh my God,
Right.
I'm so
And just,
happy that that's happening. Yeah.
oh, thank you. And just like the amount of energy you take back for yourself
Mm,
when you're not involved in that inner struggle, when you're not in that no-win situation. If I give in, I'm damned. If I resist, oh, it hurts. Like there's just, that's what's been so amazing. It's not like it's perfect. There are still some things that I do that with, but for the most part, it's just a total shift in what I think about during the day, how much space goes to food,
yeah,
and that's a huge relief. It's a huge relief.
absolutely. Yeah. I remember after the hypnosis and starting to do this work of being like just so much spaciousness and being like, oh my God, like, what am I going to do now? So, what opened up for you after you didn't have that battle
I think
anymore?
what's opening up, well, I think that's what started to open up the thought of, what do I want in my life? What do I
Mm-hmm.
really want?
Yes.
And that's where, being in a relationship is something I really want, but haven't considered for the last several years, actually. Like I did do a lot of dating after my second marriage and had, some really nice relationships and some difficult ones, but nothing that really lasted. And then just took, I don't know, I feel like I took like 4 years off from even considering dating. I was very busy with other projects in my life and, all the other subconscious things of I'm getting old, I'm not desirable, like, all that
Yeah.
stuff,
All that stuff.
all
Yep.
that
Yep.
stuff, that
Uh-huh.
minor stuff. So I
Mm-hmm.
think, as that started to quiet down, looking at, what is next for me? Because I think, and also in this past year or two, I know most of us have had some kind of struggles, just due to what's going on in the world, but I started to have a more narrow view of what my future might look like, just sort of shutting down some possibilities or just not even seeing them anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
that began to shift. Like I began to open up, my field of vision. And it's like, well, I really do want to be in a relationship. It's not impossible. It's still scary, but it allowed me to have the energy to consider it and to start taking those steps that, again, did not feel easy. Like, well, if I want to be in a relationship, I need to meet some people, like,
Right.
right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm already like, I'm a bit of an introvert, socially anyway. And I work from home, always did. So, and with the pandemic, it certainly made it just harder. Like I'm just not joining clubs or going to movie, like, I'm just not doing stuff. And, so that step of, well, what is an action step I can take? Well, I could get back on online dating. I had done that years ago and I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then thinking, oh, but I don't want to, and,
Of
and
course.
having to do some work around that.
Mm-hmm.
And finally saying, okay, well, this is my action step, just do it. Like, don't be a wuss, like, just do
Yes.
it. And
Uh-huh.
let's see what happens. It doesn't have to be an amazing experience, but you just need to show up. You
Right.
have to show up in some way.
Yeah.
So did that, immediately felt like, oh, I wish I hadn't done this. Like it was not like this
Mm.
beautiful, clear, easy path, and just realizing, okay, what else is coming up? And working more on those things, on the challenge of just, initiating an email conversation with someone or doing a call and trying to decipher what's going on. And, even on, I shared with the group, and it's so great to have a group that you can come to when you're doing anything, in life that's challenging or new, and know that they're just there to support you, right? There's not going to be judgment, and you've got a great coach in every one of the group meetings that we have. There's a great coach to guide you through it. And so to be able to say, well, I talked to someone and I don't know, he just kept repeating the same stories over and over, and he kept asking me the same questions. And I don't know, maybe he has Alzheimer's, and like that can be amusing, but also it was me, those can be natural concerns, but it was also a pattern I do of like, how can I eliminate this? What's wrong with this person? Let me see if I can eliminate them right away, as opposed to maybe I need to actually meet them and, and get a better read on who they are, which led me to actually going on a date for the first time last week, for coffee, an easy casual date, and being so pleasantly surprised at who this person was in person. And just like, oh, I'm so glad I did that. I would not have done that without the encouragement of the group, without having a coach and doing a private session with a coach as well around what's some of the old relationship stuff, because that's where this all comes from, those deep roots of who you are in the world and how you relate to others that are formed from the moment of birth. And so, yeah, let's go all the way back there and clean that up. But anyway, just like without the group support and, expert coaching around overcoming these fears that show up, or these, the hidden beliefs of what something's going to be like before you've even experienced it.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was very powerful. That's just been really fun. So
to everyone listening and watching, this is like masterfulness in full force of exactly how to just kick butt in life, but then doing this program and using it in all of its aspects to really like catapult to what we want.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's just like both, right? Like, it's like sometimes we're not taking the action at all. And it's like, okay, let's do the subconscious stuff to see what's in the way. And then we take the action. And then sometimes it's just like, take the action, right? Getting on the dating apps. And then I love how then it's like, because every time we take action, it stirs something, especially when it's towards our biggest fears, like whatever comes up with relationship stuff or whatever. And I feel like, and you can let me know, Pam, but it's just like, it's like we're increasing our mental and emotional thermostat of what we can handle, right? By having that kind of support or whatever. And then the awareness of thought of being like, okay, like, here's the emotional swirl now from this next step that I took and this next step. When I hired a relationship coach in the past, I remember I was like in a pretty good place. And she was like, oh yeah, like maybe you should get on the dating apps. And I had never done dating like that before. And I was just like, well, I feel kind of good where I'm at. Like, I don't really, she's like, yes, but you said you want to be married one day, right? And I was like, yeah. She was like, so you got to start now, because you got to work on yourself. You got to keep using each date and each, right? Because it's an emotional process and it can be too hard to do that on your own. If I didn't have the backup of coach, if I didn't have Dana to support me, right? If I didn't have all of that, like, I wouldn't be the woman I am today. So it's just like, how do we, it's just masterful. So thank you for just spelling that out so clearly. Right. One of the things I got from Dana, the transformation coach that Pam is talking about not too long ago, was just doing the inner work and the inner child stuff. And like the thing of like, oh, well, if I have a healthy relationship that isn't, having some drama in it or something, like, then it's going to be boring. Like, then it, right. Like, that's literally what came up was like, it's going to be boring. And it was like, wow. Right. So like having to get myself, like my body, my nervous system into a state of like, is that boring? Like, and then realizing that I kept attracting like these fixer uppers or like whatever, these dramatic scenarios, so that there was like, and I think we as coaches have it harder because it's like, we can see right through it and we're like, oh, we can work on that. Oh my God, stop. We need to stop. So like, now I am ready for a boring relationship, because it's I
couldn't agree more.
Right.
That's so funny. Yes, because I've had that pattern as well. Like, I want someone with a little like the reformed bad boy, like, that's okay if they've struggled with things in the past, it'll be different now. It's like,
Oh my
no, I
gosh.
just don't want to do that.
Exactly. It's like, I just want boring,
Yeah,
boring, boring. Like, just show me that you could show up in these certain ways and we're good, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah. And I really think that that equals a dedication and commitment to always staying ourselves and being on our own path, respecting someone else's, and keep alignment with ourselves. So
yeah, yeah.
awesome. Pam, well, you're a coach, you're a transformation coach, and I'm sure you do amazing work. And who do you primarily work with? Who do you primarily help? And how can people find you too? I'm sure some women
Sure.
would be very attracted to who you are and the way you're showing up.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So you can go to my website, PamelaDriscoll.com. And the women, I mostly work with women. I have had a few male clients and they've been beautiful, but mostly I work with women, and it's where I really like to spend my time. And, I really, my driving motivation is to help others enjoy their lives more all the time. And I know the struggles that we can go through. I think I've experienced almost everything that a woman can experience, in lifetime, or some version of it, or know people close to me who have. And I know what it's like when you have support and you have tools to work on those things and to get some of that inner healing. Mostly I like working with groups. I have a group right now that's just amazing, where we use primarily tapping, emotional freedom technique, and the aroma freedom technique, which is using essential oils and some very specific practices to eliminate those inner blocks and the old subconscious beliefs that aren't serving us, and then take action. And again, having that group container has been so powerful, because it allows people to, like, I'm experiencing that now as a group member, like knowing I have this group I can meet with, I can go to every week, and they're going to be there for me, and that there's nothing off limits. You're going to support one another. You're going to get good guidance. And I love being able to create that for other women as well. So if anyone's interested, you can shoot me an email at pam@pameladriscoll.com, or just visit my website, pameladriscoll.com. And I'd love to hear more about your journey and help you improve your life. So, yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. Perfect. I'm sure after they heard all of your stories and, the divorces and the loss, and like you said, been through so much. Wow, that sounds like a beautiful experience. I can only imagine the space you hold, and aromatherapies are so amazing. So
Yeah, that's good stuff.
yay for that. Awesome. Pam, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for
Thank
sharing so
you.
generously your story. I know it's going to make a huge difference for so many people. I really appreciate you. And I'm so delighted that you said yes and that you're here.
Oh,
And just thank you. I really, really appreciate that so
well,
much, and who you are.
you're very welcome. Thank you for asking me. And I just love the work you do, Leslie. And I think everyone should be in your group.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and all the
Appreciate
amazing coaches in your program. It's one of the best programs I think I've ever been in, honestly, for personal
Wow.
transformation.
Thank you
So,
for saying that. Really
yes,
appreciate
definitely.
that. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Pam, thank you again so much.